Hey there, and welcome this morning to our stream. My name is Sam Frangioni, and I'm so glad that you have taken the time to join us here online at our Orion campus today. We are in our third week of our I Feel series, where we're talking about what it feels like to be conflicted. Our lead pastor, Craig McGlasson, is here to teach us as we dive into the Word, so I hope that you are ready to hear from God and what He has for you in your life. I just wanted to let you know about a couple things happening, and things happening even today. Later on tonight, we have a Faith and Family Night that's being hosted by a couple of friends of mine, Joe and Taylor Leal. Taylor's on staff at our Troy campus, and that is happening tonight on Zoom. You can find out more at kensingtonchurch.org/faithandfamily. And we would love to see you there, interact with you. It's an online event. So that would be great, especially if you have parents, or if you're a parent of little ones. We also have Man Camp coming up in a few weeks. If you've heard of that, if you've heard of our Man Up retreat in the past, that is what it is. It is our Man Camp retreat, our men's retreat, happening the weekend of October 8th to the 10th. And we also have our Wild retreat coming up at the end of October that we'd love to have your middle school and high school students at. Just put it on your calendar now. Get them registered. We want to see them there. It's going to be a blast. But today we have a special day planned, and I'm excited for what God has to say to you. So press in and be ready. Thanks for joining us. Welcome to Kensington Church. I'm really glad that you're here for today's service. I'm Sam Frangioni, our arts director at the Orion campus, and although you'll never find me sipping a pumpkin spice latte and Uggs, I'm more of a salted caramel cream cold brew kind of guy. There are lots of things I do love about fall. I'm a fan of pumpkin patches, cider mills, Friday night lights, and the relaunching of many things happening around Kensington. I have two exciting fall happenings coming at you. Consider this your personal invitation. First is Man Camp. I've attended Kensington's Men Retreat for 3 years now, and trust me, this is something that you want to prioritize. Man Camp is for every man in every walk of life. That means you. You are invited, and you should come for so many reasons. Ziplining, sports, fishing, kayaking, eating, great music, breakout sessions, and more. We're calling it Man Camp because we've been thinking about how a base camp is a place of preparation for a great trek or exploration ahead. It's a place to be inspired, challenged, and reminded that the journey we're on isn't one that we're on alone, but that God is with us and that we have a brotherhood of men walking alongside us too. In years past, we've seen that a single weekend is long enough for monumental decisions to be made, friendships to be built, and legacies to be transformed. So don't miss it. Join us at Spring Hill Camps October 8th to the 10th. Info and registration at kensingtonchurch.org/mancamp. Hope to see you there. The second invitation is for parents, particularly parents of little ones. We have 2 kids at home, and when you get the chance to take in some helpful content, you take it, especially when it's free. We have a free online faith and the family event happening tonight called Raising Littles. You've probably heard the saying that the years are short and that the days are long with young children. I can definitely vouch that the days are long. But perspective is important. These long days often can leave us exhausted and wondering how we could possibly create meaningful moments to teach them about Jesus. Please join us tonight for a time of encouragement as we align ourselves with God and make room for Him to speak into these chaotic days. This event is hosted by our very own Taylor Leal, our early childhood director at the Troy campus, with guest panelists who will share practical ways to bring Jesus into our parenting and to intentionally train little hearts. Register now at kensingtonchurch.org/faithandfamily. Let's return now to our service. I believe God has something in store for each one of us. We're in the third week of our I Feel series and focusing on feeling conflicted. That's a feeling that I can definitely identify with. That internal wrestling and sometimes even indecision. Let's lean in and see what God has for us today. Thanks for being here. And here I am again. It's still me. My name's Sam. I'm on staff at our right here at our Orion campus. Gosh, I'm not doing the video anymore. It's really good to see you guys and to have you here this morning here at our Orion campus. How are we doing? Okay, good. We're awake. That's good. I don't know if any of you had your salted caramel cold brews yet or your pumpkin spice lattes, but it's good to be here. It's good to be here. We have a powerful day planned. I just wanted to start, when I was driving in this morning, God brought to mind just the passage of John 4 and the Samaritan woman, if you've ever heard that story. There's this woman, and Jesus goes out of his way to meet her. And what she does, she goes on, after this conversation with Jesus, this crazy encounter with him, to really change her community by sharing the gospel. And she's almost one of the first evangelists that we have on record in the gospel. And what Jesus says to her, because she's there to get water, and she's there kind of in a hidden way because she doesn't want to be seen by anyone, and Jesus goes to meet her because of his care for her, because of his love for her. And what he says, anyone who drinks this water will soon become thirsty again, but those who drink the water I give will never be thirsty again. It becomes a fresh, bubbling spring within them, giving them eternal life. And I just love that. I love that we have access to the living water. And it's not because of anything we've done, anything we can do, but it's because of who Jesus is and how much he loves us, how much he cares for us this morning. I just thought that was important there's no better way to start our day than to be centered on his word and on his promises. And so I hope that you're able to be encouraged by that, to hold on to that as we move forward through our day, as you move forward through your week. But also there are a couple of things that we have going on. I'm not going to promote them just how I just did in the same way on the screen. But we do have our Man Camp that's happening on October 8th through the 10th. So if you've been to Man Up, it is what we have done, similar, but it's a little different. We have a little bit of a new vision behind it, and I'm getting to help plan it right now, which is really cool, really exciting. So I would encourage you, if you're a man, I don't know what our age is, probably like 14 or something like that, through 110, you're invited. We'd love to have you there that weekend. You can sign up at kensingtonchurch.org/mancamp. And then the other thing I mentioned in the video was that Raising Littles, the Raising Littles event happening tonight. It's funny, the thing that you don't know about the video is my little daughter, who's like 3.5, was running around the entire video shoot. And I started to laugh a little bit in the video, if you couldn't tell, and I was like, oh, yep, that's why I'm laughing. She was a mess that day. But we had chicken nuggets, and that kind of held it down mostly, enough that you might have not known she was there. But that event is happening tonight. It's on Zoom, so you can interact from it wherever you are. Whether you're wherever you are, you can watch. You can join in on Zoom. Just register at kensingtonchurch.org/faithandfamily. The last thing that I didn't promote in the video, so this is bonus content. In about a month, if you have a middle school or a high school student, or you are a middle school or high school student, we have our Wild Retreat, which we didn't get to do last year, but we're back up at Spring Hill Camps at the end of October. So that's Halloween weekend. It is going to be a great time. It's going to be a ton of fun. So from October 29th to the 31st, you can find out more at kensingtonchurch.org/wild, and we would love to see your student there. But before we move on with the rest of our day, you guys, if you feel free, you can stand up and say hey to somebody and talk about your favorite thing about the fall. All right, we'll see you.
Morning, Orion. Hey, good morning. Hey, two really quick things I want to let you know about, and then I'm going to let these guys take us into the rest of our morning. Both really exciting, both just two more examples of, I think, incredible ways that God is moving in our community. One is very local to us as a campus, and one is us as campuses, as an overall movement called Kensington. Let me really quickly highlight the local one, and I'm going to talk more about it at the end of the day. Hopefully you got an email from me in the last couple weeks, probably two of them actually if you're reading. One is to just tell you about a really exciting project we've got coming up to develop space. Hold on, don't look there. Man, you guys are just like my kids. There's a screen, you're looking at it. Right here for a minute. We're gonna go there in a second. So the email first that I sent out to you is to tell you about the opportunity we have at two developments right here at our facility. One is really dreaming about how to develop our kids' space in a more engaging way to draw on our kids, to draw on our families, to draw on you, and to create a space that says we value our kids, to create an opportunity for them to engage with one another even before and after service that maybe frees you up a little bit to be able to connect and to talk. So we've got this whole kids space area that's being developed. We've got plans coming together. The one I'm also extremely excited about is beyond that, is the green space that we're talking about putting in. If you have not noticed, one thing Orion has lots of is asphalt. We have no grass anywhere. And so we have really been dreaming out what to do to create opportunity for us to engage not just with each other, but to create space to present to and offer up to our community, to Orion at large. And say, we want you to use our facility. And so our north lot over here, you're gonna see construction equipment moving in pretty quickly, is gonna start converting that parking lot, mostly about 75% of it, into outdoor green space. So picture fire pits, pergolas, outdoor tree lightings with a 60-foot tree in the middle of it instead of buried up against the building. Picture kids' functions happening out there. We've got today, it's party in the lobby. Picture party with grass outside, or I shouldn't say party with grass, party on the grass, totally different party. Party on the grass outside. So many opportunities. Later today, at the end of the service, I'm going to tell you more about how to hear about that and engage with it, but I just want to throw it out at the start. Here's the other opportunity that's very exciting for us as Kensington, and this goes beyond just us as a campus, it's us as an entire community. Several weeks ago, you may remember that we, as everything began to disintegrate in Afghanistan, came to you and presented an opportunity for you to contribute financially to getting families out of Afghanistan. We have a global partner there, working through them. Unbelievable. Your generosity, the stories that have come out, there have been, I mean, honestly, just heartbreaking stories of those who didn't make it and of those who did, and those who did because of your generosity. And here's one of the things my family and I, we sat around the table as that was all happening and talked about what we would do and what level of participation we were going to enter into with that. And one of the things I started feeling is this, I don't know if some of you had this, but like money, like there's times where money is what you've got to do, and money got people out of there. But there's other times, and this is what I felt one night, like I want to do more. Like I want physical, personal skin in the game on this. And I started thinking, what would it look like if we could meet some of these families and actually help them somehow? Like, I don't know how, and I don't know where they're at in the world, but what if we could actually physically help them? There was a time, there's a whole nother story for another day, but there was a time that my dad spent a decent chunk in jail when we were kids. And there was a family in our church that came alongside us during that time and helped with some of our needs and just helped with some of the emotional journey that we had to go through with that. And I think because of that moment, like I've always wanted to be that kind of family for somebody in a desperate moment. And so here's what's super exciting. In the last couple of weeks, our Move Out organization, which is the group here at Kensington that does all of our work to get us outside of our buildings and actually put our love for Jesus into tangible ways to serve our neighbors, has partnered up with an organization locally called Samaritas. Samaritas' effort, their whole purpose is to help relocate and reestablish refugees that are fleeing from places like Afghanistan. And so they're working right now with a number of refugees that are being resettled right here, not just in the United States, but in our region and in our community. And so we've decided that we're going to partner up with them. It's going to become an entirely new move-out group for us, an effort. And there's so many reasons why we have picked Samaritas to join with, not the least of which is that they're working. Like what they're doing is actually working. For example, 75% of the people that Samaritas helps are on their feet and self-sustainable within 180 days. So they're really working to get people not just here's what you need in the moment, but really establish them for the long haul and help them set really an entirely new trajectory for their future. So here's the opportunity for us. It's a 6-month commitment that we're going to invite you into with one family to walk with them kind of as a community guide. if you will. And the opportunities, there's several of them that could take place over time. From helping them navigate literally the neighborhood, where do you grocery shop, translation issues, filling out paperwork for jobs, filling out paperwork for there's all kinds of opportunities. So rather than run you through the list of opportunities, what I would love to do is invite you to come hear more about what it would look like and what it would entail. So October 5th, 7 o'clock to 8 o'clock. It's all going to be online through Zoom. KensingtonChurch.org/moveout is where you can go to register for it and read more information. This is one of the most unique opportunities for us as a church, to do something that, frankly, the church had a reputation of doing all the way back to the Old Testament. It had an instruction and an admonition to do into the New Testament, which was to look out for the foreigners, for the strangers in your land, to care for those who are unsettled and disrupted and who are coming from very similar situations like those who are coming out of Afghanistan. I hope that we can be a church that, in the midst of all the chaos that has disrupted so many lives and frankly taken so many, that this is a moment where we can rise up as a church and say, on our watch and in our community, we will be the hands and the feet of Jesus, helping those who are hurting. So if that's you, if that's us, there's where you need to go to hear more information. So the song we're going to go into right now is a song called Light. It's not a new one for us. And I just think as we sing this, here's one of the things I was thinking even as I listened to it this morning. When we sing about Jesus being the light of creation, one of the ways that we prove he is to put his love for us into our hands as we serve our neighbors. This is one of those ways.
Of hope. You have a way of opening the promise even when the door's still closed. It's what you do, it's who you are. You are like a wildfire in the dark. It's how you move, it's how you work. You can change the whole thing with one word.
Let
covenant and faithful promises. Time and time again, you have proven you'll do just what you've said. Though the storms may come and the winds may blow, I'll remain steadfast and let my heart learn when you speak a word, it will come to pass. Great is your faithfulness to me. Great is your faithfulness to me. From the rising sun to the setting same, I will praise your name. Great is your faithfulness to me. God, from age to age, though the earth may pass away, your word remains the same. Oh, your history can prove there's nothing you can't do. You're faithful and true. Though the storms may come and the winds may blow, I'll remain steadfast and let my heart learn when you speak a word, it will come to pass. Great is your faithfulness to me. Great is your faithfulness to me. From the rising sun to the setting same, I will praise your name. Great is your faithfulness to me. Oh, your faithfulness, it never runs out. I put my faith in Jesus, my anchor to the ground, my hope and firm foundation. He'll never let me down. I'll put my faith in Jesus, my anchor to the ground, my hope and firm foundation. He'll never let me down. I'll put my faith in Jesus, my anchor to the ground, my hope and firm foundation. He'll never let me down. I'll put my faith in Jesus, my anchor to the ground, my hope and firm foundation. He'll never let me down. He'll never let me down. Great is your faithfulness to me. Great is your faithfulness to me. From the rising sun to the setting same, I will praise your name. Great is your faithfulness to me. From the rising sun to the setting same, I will praise your name. Great is your faithfulness to me.
Hey, hold on. Stay standing for just a minute. Like, come on, we were ready to sit, man. I'm gonna put those words back up for a minute. It's gonna look in a little different format. But I want you to see these lyrics. Today, we've been in this series called I Feel. For a variety of reasons, but not the least of which is the fact that God has given to us this incredible capacity to feel. I mean, imagine if God would made us as people that had no ability to feel. He could have, but instead he gave us a part of who he is with this capacity to feel at a variety of things, to feel at an unbelievable depth. And so there's a reality that sometimes when you feel, it can put you with God in a place of conflict internally, a place of crossroads where what we believe doesn't seem to line up with what we're experiencing. And so I think that this is a song that it's a little bit of kind of that. It reflects some of that crossroad tension, conflict at times where we say things that we believe, but then life presents us a different experience. So let me show it to you. So here it is, right? So we just sang this. You're the God of covenant and faithful promises, and all of this finds its root, its foundation in the Bible. You'll do just what you said. Great is your faithfulness to me. As a matter of fact, can you sing it without the band? Like if they just kind of keep mellow like this? Serious, can you sing it with me? Don't let me just read it. Do this with it, sing it with me. I don't care, you're like, I don't sing well, neither do I. And I've got a mic and I'm gonna do it with you right now. I'm probably gonna crack like I'm in puberty in my voice, but just do it with me. You'll do just what you said. Here we go, ready? Sing it, great is faith. Great is your faithfulness to me. Great is your faithfulness to me. Keep going. From the rising sun to the setting same. Great is your faithfulness. Right. Here's the conflict. Is that many of you, like me, if you've walked with Jesus any length of time, you've had moments in your life where your experiences were a situation where life in that moment, it does not feel like God is being very faithful. It feels like God is being very unfaithful. Moments in life that would put us at a sort of crossroads where we have to choose, do I really believe this? Do I believe, regardless of what my circumstances are telling me, that he is faithful? And those are moments that put us at this crossroad where we have to decide, like, who do I and what do I really put my trust in? So here's the answer to the conflict in that song. The answer to the conflict, the decision in the moment of crossroads in that song, here it is. We just sang this as well. Next slide. I put my faith in Jesus. When I believe great is his faithfulness, but my circumstances say something different, and I'm at a crossroads, here's what I choose. I put my faith in Jesus, my anchor to the ground, my hope and firm foundation. Do you know the rest of it? He'll never let me down. There's a version of the song that actually goes on to sing this. I'll still bless you in the middle of the storm, in the middle of my trial, in the middle of the road when I don't know where to go, I will still bless you. So for 3 weeks, as we've looked at this idea of feelings and what we feel, we've been trying to lean into the story in the life of David in the Bible, a guy who was described as a man after God's own heart. Because there's a variety of moments in David's life where he felt very deeply, and if he was who is said of him, a man after God's own heart, then it's been our task to try and understand, what does a man after God's own heart, what does a woman after God's own heart do in a moment where the feelings are deep? Because we can feel at a variety and because we can feel at a depth, that also means that there are times where our feelings can lead us instead of us lead them. And so our task has been looking at David's life at moments when he felt overlooked and unseen, at moments where he felt anxious, and today at moments where he felt conflicted. What do we do? So let me pray. Father in heaven, I just come before you and acknowledge great is your faithfulness. Even when life and circumstances or people or our own brain and our own heart would tell us different, you are the faithful God of covenant. And so I pray this morning that you would be the God who speaks to us in clarity and in compassion and in direction. And I pray that from this stage in the next little bit of time, it would be your voice heard So God, help me to be true to your scriptures, true most of all to the person of Jesus Christ. And I pray that anything that would come from me that is not from you, then just take it from me right now even. God, would you enable us to lift up Jesus, that our eyes would be drawn to him? And would you meet us in the very different places that we're all at this morning? Tenderly, confidently, and clearly, meet us. In Christ's name, amen. Now you can sit. Jeez, oh Pete, finally. So one of the things we always do at this point in the morning, and be no exception today, is just thank you for your generosity that always enables us to do so many things that we do. The partnership that we had already in Afghanistan that was the launching platform for helping get people out of that country is because of your consistent, regular generosity. So thank you for those of you that are part of it. If you are not a part of it, you are invited in to what I believe is one of the greatest things that we can do with a portion of our resources. Here's all the ways that we do it. So I encourage you to just be a part of that journey with us and that opportunity. If you're going, I don't like screen, I like tactile, I don't want to send things over my phone, we've got giving boxes that'll be at the exits when you leave if you prefer to do that. So as always, I just want to say thank you so much for your generosity and what you enable us to do as a community. So I want to share a really quick story, and I debated whether or not to do this because one of the things I'm always sensitive of when I speak is I don't ever want to tell stories that make it about me, but there's a story of a moment where I definitely felt in a season of what I want to talk about today. And so I just want to briefly share it as quick as I can sum it up, because I think when we're talking about moments of conflict, like what do we do in the moments where what we think God said, what we think we believe about him doesn't seem to line up with the experience that we're in, like what do we do? This was a huge moment for me years ago. So maybe you're like, oh, that's a simple one when I tell it, but this is mine. This is my story. When I went to college, I did not have any aspiration to be a pastor. I thought I was going to be a police officer. That's what I went to school for initially. That's the direction I was on. I had a brother-in-law that was going to get me into Southfield and the cadet program. Like I was all mapped out. That's where I was going. So I had this moment in college where I won't give you all the details, but that shifted big. And God was very involved in that moment for me and just really kind of spoke to me. And when I say speak to me, like just to be clear always, like not audible, just it's impression. Sometimes it's very clearly spoken here when I hear his voice. Sometimes it's the impression he puts on me. Sometimes he uses other people. But I had a moment where I definitely felt like what God was impressing to me is, hey, this police officer route, that's you. It's not me. That's your plan. It's not my plan. And so I did. I had this moment of initially conflict going, this is what I want to do. And yet I feel like you're telling me to do something different. And so I changed direction, and I ended up changing my focus in school, and I went biblical studies instead. And then I thought, I'm gonna be a youth pastor. I thought that's what God wanted me to do forever. And so I ended up becoming a youth pastor. I worked with high school, junior high, college age. And I thought, I'm gonna do this until the day I die. And then I got involved in a church that was awesome until it wasn't. And it fell apart at one point. There was again, more details, won't get into all of them now, but basically it was a pastor that thought this stage was about his popularity instead of his ability to serve. And he just began to lead the church around him, made it all about him. Everything began to fall apart at one point. Went from a thriving, growing church to Christians behaving badly. Like it was a horrible experience. And so I found myself in a moment going, I will love you. I will serve you forever. I believe you called me to do this, but this is insane. I can't do this for a job. I'm going to work somewhere else, and I'll figure that part of my life out, but I can't keep doing this. And again, I'm in this moment of conflict where I felt like very clearly God had told me to do this, to do it at that place, and yet I'm going, I don't want to be here. So I went to this conference, and I had this moment where I told God, and I don't know if you've ever done this with him, where you kind of like, hey, I'm going to do this if you don't. And so I did. I had a moment where I just said, if you don't speak while I'm away at this conference, I'm going to go home and quit my job. Like, I'm done. I'm not working for a church anymore. I'm going to love you, going to serve you, but not working for a church. And so I ended up at this conference, and he spoke. And there was a song that we were singing, and there was a line in it, and I don't remember the whole song. As a matter of fact, I think I didn't even like the song. It was a weird song, but there was one line. Just talking about a bird flying or something. I was like, what? All I could think of is wanting to shoot the bird, and I'm like, a bird. And I felt like God used that, and he said, hey, this is what I just felt like he impressed in my head. I know you feel like a grounded bird whose wings have been clipped, but you're gonna fly again. Stay your post. So I did. I went home and doubled down instead of quitting. And then a year later, I had an opportunity to move out to McKinney, Texas. There was a job offer there. They flew me out, wined and dined my wife and I for a week, made us the offer at the end of the week. I said yes. And it was a big church, thriving church. It was a newer church growing really rapidly, super exciting. I'm like, this is it. We had no kids yet. We're out of Michigan. So I said yes to the whole opportunity, got home, got off the plane immediately. I felt like God said, that's your idea, that's not mine. And again, it put me at this moment of conflict. And even in my marriage, moment of conflict where my wife's like, you're not hearing God right. We're supposed to go. And I'm like, I know, I don't know what to do. And I had this moment like, I know you told me, but I don't want to be here. And then there's this opportunity, God. And I found myself through just that experience multiple times in these moments of conflict where I could have chosen to believe wrong things about what God wanted for me and gone wrong directions. At one point, I could have done it because of hurt and anger. I could have done it because of pain and running away from it instead of taking that pain and running to God. At another time, I could have chosen the wrong thing that I thought God was saying in the wrong direction out of the lure of the bigger and the better. But in all of it, here's what I kept forcing myself to do, is to trust in the words of the resurrected Jesus, that when he said in the book of Jeremiah, I have plans for you, that he actually truly does. And that if I just continue to try to bend my ear to his voice instead of his ear to my voice, I would know what he had for me. And so I waited on him. But what do you do when you have these moments? This thing that you thought God said he was going to do for you or give to you. Maybe by way of just impressing something on you, or maybe it was just this deep belief that he was going to give to you or do for you, or maybe somebody else even told you he was going to do for you. Maybe this was something about a marriage or a relationship or a career path or a child or a dream that you had. What do you do when you have this, and then all of a sudden it feels like this thing that you thought God said he was going to do, and it feels like he's breaking his word, and it feels like instead of displaying his faithfulness, he's displaying his lack of it. Like, what do you do in that moment? Because that's a part of David's story that we're going to jump into today and take us into the third week of the series. So if you have a Bible, go ahead and grab it. We're going to go to a book called 1 Samuel. There's 1 Samuel. It's pretty early on, so not too difficult to find. If you don't even know how to navigate the Bible yet, that's okay. We'll put all the verses on screen so that you can get through it quickly. So 1 Samuel, chapter 24. This is what we read, verse 1. After Saul returned from pursuing the Philistines, he was told, David is in the desert of En-Gedi. And so Saul took 3,000 able young men from Israel and set out to look for David. By the way, based on the amount of men that we think David had with him at this point, it's about a 5-to-1 between what Saul had and what David had. So Saul comes with 3,000 men, sets out to look for David and his men near the crags and the wild goats. And he came to the sheep pens along the way. A cave was there, and Saul went in to relieve himself. David and his men were far back in the cave. So that phrase used here in the Hebrew, to relieve himself, literally can be translated as to cover his feet. You don't need the visual, right? So you get the idea. Like, there's no questioning the posture that Saul's in this cave. So we're going to give Saul a minute to do his business, and I'm going to walk you through a very quick history of what got us to this point. 25 years ago, Saul was selected as king. He was the first king over the nation of Israel. And for a time, he was an incredible king, but the time didn't last very long. Over a short amount of time, Saul began to believe that he knew better than God and chose to disagree and then to walk away from God's instructions. Over time, God rejects him as king, goes to Samuel, says, Samuel, I need a new king. So he sends Samuel to a very particular young man named David, 15 years old, says, that's the one you're to anoint as king. So while Saul is still king, Samuel goes to David, who's a shepherd at the time, calls him out of the field. Remember this, week 1? Goes past all of his brothers. He's got Brad Pitt and everybody else, big, buff, good looking. God says, no, you look on the outside. I don't look on the outside, I look on the inside. That's my man, gets to David. So David at 15 is selected to be the next king. You would think in that moment his whole life would change, but it didn't. It stayed very the same for a while. I mean, there was no prestigious school he was initially sent to. There was no training in warfare or kingship or the Torah or government. There was no mentorship with Saul, the current king. No plans of succession were drawn up. David largely just kind of goes back to his own life, which, like, imagine that as a 15-year-old, you're told you're going to be the next king, and then everything stays the same. I've got to imagine there's a little bit of conflict there. Like, what? That doesn't line up with what I thought you just said. However, while still a teenager, it was David who goes on to challenge and then slay Israel's number one enemy, Goliath. You remember that story? David and Goliath and the stones, and so he brings him down. At that moment, Israel falls in love with David, like loves him. They start to shout it from the rooftops. He wins other battles. He becomes their warrior. I mean, Saul's still king, but David is their warrior. And the people just love him. Parades are thrown for him. There's celebrations in his honor, literally from the rooftop shouting. And so very quickly, Saul, who at this point has gotten to know David and appreciates him, now starts to not appreciate him. He starts to become very threatened by him. And so instead of banding together with him, this future king, and beginning to pour into him, he now tries to take his life. He declares him public enemy number one, and he sends him on the hunt. And so again, Saul's got his whole army, not just in this moment, but now we think maybe for around the last 10 years, has been hunting down David, trying to kill him. Again, think conflict in this moment, where David has been told, you'll be the next king, and yet the current king is trying to take his life. Do you think that'll create a little bit of internal conflict? Over the time that he's been on the run, there is a community that's gathered around David that want him to be king and don't want Saul to be king anymore. And of that group, there are several hundred who are warriors. And not like farmers with pitchfork warriors, like these are some bad dudes. At one place in the Bible, in the book of Psalms 57, David actually makes a short reference to who these men were. I want you to see that these are the men that are in the back of the cave with him at the moment that we're reading. Psalms 57 says this, I am in the midst of lions. I am forced to dwell among ravenous beasts, men whose teeth are spears and arrows, whose tongues are sharp as swords. These are the men that he's in this cave with. So think about this. David at this point in his life is probably somewhere around 25-ish. So, I mean, this is a time in life where you've got a lot of drive, a lot of aspiration, and then surrounded by him is this group of spear-teeth men who are poised and ready for a fight. Like, they're not trying to avoid it, they're ready. They want it. And these are men that want David on the throne, and they want Saul off the throne. And you have this moment where Saul is at his most exposed and David is at his most powerful. And can you imagine the conflict in that moment of David trying to figure out, okay, what do I do now? Because there's Saul, and here's my chance. And if he didn't feel conflicted yet, I guarantee he felt conflicted in what happened next. Verse 4, and the men said, this is the day that the Lord spoke of when he said to you, I will give your enemy into your hands for you to deal with as you wish. And then David crept up unnoticed and cut off a corner of Saul's robe. So in chapter 16, you have the moment where David is told, you'll be the future king. Chapter 24, he's hiding in the back of a cave with his men on run for his life because Saul has been threatening him for years, trying to hunt him down and take his head. What do you do in moments in life where promise and provision don't seem to line up? Where it seems like God is not displaying his faithfulness to you, but his lack of. Where it seems like he's taking away promises he made. Where he's removing things that brought joy. Where he's failing to bring something to bear that you thought he said would happen. What do you do? And I think clearly one of the first things that you have to do is you have to take note of the voices that are in your ear. Because they'll determine the voice that you send to God's ear in terms of what you ask and what you say. For example, if you look at David here, I think considering the fact that he's had maybe around 10 years of his life being hunted and arguably very little to say that God has been faithful, you could make a really good argument that he's instead had a lot that would lead him to wrongfully interpret God's faithfulness, to wrongfully interpret God's care and affection for him, to wrongfully interpret God's promises to him, which means that in this moment, he could also be led to wrongfully interpret what's happening right in front of him. Here would be the wrongful interpretation. This is my time. There's Saul doing his duty. I've got 600 ravenous men behind me. I'm a ninja. Clearly, he snuck up and cut off the robe. He's like, this is it. This is my moment. I mean, God made this promise to me. This guy, he wants to take my life. I mean, so clearly God must have put him right here in front of me. This is it. This is my moment. This is my hour. I mean, that would have been the wrongful interpretation. but it is the interpretation other people are making. You see in the text, his men who are with him must have whispered somehow in distance so Saul didn't hear it. They said, this is the day the Lord spoke of when he said. Here's another way that Hebrew phrase can be translated. Today, the Lord is saying. Today, the Lord is, this is literally what's happening. They're in the cave and the guys are like, David, come here. I got a word from the Lord. God is speaking. He is giving me a sign. I need to give it to you. David, this is what God is saying right now. You ever notice that there's some people in life that just love to speak on God's behalf and tell you what he's always saying? Right? And somehow they've got their ear to God. There's a guy in college that wanted to tell me that God didn't want me dating my wife. Come to find out he wanted to date my wife. I'm like, apparently you got your name and God's name mixed up, buddy. But there's just people in life that always want to speak on God's behalf and tell you what God's saying. Can I just remind you of something that I think you probably already know? Everybody who speaks for God is not speaking for God. Everybody who tells you what God is saying to you is not telling you what God is saying to you. But you've got this moment of conflict in the life of David, where he's been given a promise from God and the voices around him are telling him how to interpret this moment as what God is saying to him. And sometimes when you have a voice telling you what God is saying, it doesn't mean it's an evil, wicked voice. Many times they're well-intending people that love you. I've had people, even this last year, people that love me, people that I love, that are trying to tell me things that God is saying that frankly I don't think God is saying. And they're not doing it maliciously, but it doesn't matter. It's not God's voice. And so you have to, in moments of these conflict where you're going, I don't know what to believe about my situation in comparison to what I think about God, you have to be very careful what voices you let in your ear. Because again, they will determine your voice into the ear of God. So you've got David here in this moment trying to figure out, okay, what do I do? And so what he does initially is he lets his men influence him. Clearly, he starts at least for a moment at this crossroad to believe that his men are actually possibly interpreting what God is saying. That's why he sneaks up and he cuts off the robe. It's almost like a test. Let me see how close I can get. He's being led to believe what they're saying about how to interpret this moment and what ultimately God is saying. But what he does very quickly is realizes the error in his ways and realizes that he's on the brink of making wrong decisions about who God is, what God wants, and then going in wrong directions as a result of it. How do I know? Because that's what happens next. I just read the book, that's all. Go back to 24. This is what we read. Verse 5, afterward, David was conscience-stricken for having cut off a corner of the robe. And he said to his men, the Lord forbid that I should do such a thing to my master, the Lord's anointed, or lay my hand on him, for he is the anointed of the Lord. At one point, just like David was chosen to be king, so was Saul. So that's what he's acknowledging here. Like God picked him. Whether or not he's wandered away from God, that's for God to deal with. There was a moment God picked him. That's what he means when he says he's the Lord's anointed. Verse 7, with these words, David sharply rebuked his men and did not allow them to attack Saul. And so Saul left the cave and went on his way. But then David went out of the cave and called out to Saul, my Lord the king. And when Saul looked behind him, David bowed down and prostrated himself with his face to the ground. And he said to Saul, why do you listen when men say David is bent on harming you? Saul's doing the same thing David was just about to do, listening to the wrong voices, making the wrong decisions as a result. Verse 10, this day you have seen with your own eye how the Lord delivered you into the hands of the cave. Some urged me to kill you, but I spared you. I said, I will not lay my hand on my Lord because he is the Lord's anointed. See, my father, look at this piece of your robe in my hand. I cut off the corner of your robe, but I did not kill you. See that there is nothing in my hand to indicate that I am guilty of wrongdoing or rebellion. I have not wronged you, but you are hunting me down to take my life. May the Lord judge between you and me, and may the Lord avenge the wrongs that you have done to me. But my hand will not touch you. As the old saying goes, from evildoers come evil deeds, so my hand will not touch you. There has been moments that would verify in the last 10 years that God is with David, but I think you could possibly argue that there have been more. There have been more moments that would leave you confused as to what God was up to. Possibly more moments to show and reflect that God is in fact unfaithful instead of faithful. And yet, in a moment where David could have taken matters into his own hands, he chooses trust, and he places matters into the hands of the Lord. And that's ultimately the crossroad moment, is do I take matters into my own hands, or do I put matters into the hands of the Lord? And sometimes I think the most spiritually pure and powerful thing that you and I can do in life is to trust Jesus when our circumstances, when other voices, and when everything around us tells us God is a liar who does not care about you, who is unfaithful to you, and yet you trust. And I think some of us right now are probably sitting in a similar moment. Maybe there's nobody hunting down your life like David, but it would be a moment for you that feels a little bit like a crossroad. A moment of trying to figure out what in the world has got up to because my circumstances say something different than what we sing, than what we read, and than what I know I believe about him to be true, but my circumstances are saying something different, and I'm feeling this conflict right now. And there's no end to the possible scenarios of what that could be, but I gave a couple just for example. Maybe it could be a conflict of doubting that God truly loves you because of something that's deeply wounded you. Maybe it could be a moment of conflict in trusting that he does in fact have plans for your life because life just seems to be falling apart. Maybe it's a moment of conflict in being obedient to something he's called your life to be about because of the temptation to go another way just feels better. Maybe it's a moment of conflict in letting new people love you because of how old people have hurt you. Maybe it's a moment of conflict in wanting to commit and be a part of this community because of how church has hurt you. Maybe it's a moment of conflict waiting on God to open up an opportunity that other voices in your life are telling you to go make happen. Maybe it's a moment of conflict where your passion is leading you one way in life, but your parents are trying to direct you another way. Or maybe it's just a moment of conflict believing that as we live out the gospel in our lives, we can actually make a difference in this world because as you look around, all you see is the brokenness of humanity and the wickedness of people to people. So what do you do when there's this moment of conflict? Because this is David's moment of conflict. And as simple as it may sound, I think this is the option and the invitation in that moment of conflict. Do you take matters into your own hands, or do you place matters into the hands of the Lord and trust him? Because David could have taken matters into his own hands in this moment. And you could take matters into your own hands in a lot of different scenarios that I just went through. Maybe taking matters into your own hands would be you withdraw, you shut down, you do what they want you to do, you choose sin over obedience, you live a cynical life. There's a lot of ways that we can just choose in this moment. I'll take matters into my own hands instead of saying, no, I will place matters in your hands. But here's what I've come to believe. Sometimes the very place in life that would convince you God is unfaithful is exactly the place he intends to teach you that he is. Because David, he's in this season of running and hiding, and during this season, he writes some of the Psalms. You know the Psalms, the book of Psalms, it's the largest book in the Bible, written mostly by David. A number of those Psalms were written while he was actually on the run. And all of them are moments where he's acknowledging God's goodness, and he's bringing it to bear with the conflict in his own soul. I mean, if you want to see what a man after God's own heart believes and concludes in a conflicted moment, you read some of the Psalms that he wrote when he's literally running for his life. If you want to reference them, they'll be on your screen, but I'd encourage you to read them later. It's Psalms 7, 27, 31, 34, and 52. There you go. All of which were written while David was on the run. I just want to draw your attention to chapter 27 for 1 minute and show you a few of the things that literally as David is running, so conflict. God said, I'll be king. Saul's trying to take my life. Here's some of the things that he writes in that moment, literally on the run and hiding. Here's some of what he concludes. Verse 1 of chapter 27. The Lord is my light and my salvation. So whom shall I fear? The Lord is the stronghold of my life. Of whom shall I be afraid? Again, listen, this is not written while he's sitting in some cushy pastor's office on his lazy boy with his Mac in front of him and his fall latte. And no, this is written in moment of desperation where there are spears with your name on it that are seeking your life, and he has to conclude, what do I believe about God and my situation right now, because they don't say the same thing. The Lord is my light and my salvation. So whom shall I fear? The Lord is the stronghold of my life. Of whom shall I be afraid? When the wicked advance against me to devour me, it is my enemies and my foes who will stumble and fall. Though an army besiege me, my heart will not fear. Though war break out against me, even then I will be content. Here's what's so powerful about David is that his situation is telling him all kinds of things. But what David is telling his situation back is that God is my strength. God is my refuge. God is my salvation. I don't know what your situation is telling you right now, but here's what I want you to remember at moments of crossroads on your screen. And this is a truth that I think David brought to bear in his own life. The Lord determines what's true, not your circumstances. Because your circumstances will lie to you. They will lie to you about you. They will lie to you about others. They will lie to you about Jesus. That's why Satan is called the father of lies. You think he doesn't know how to manipulate your circumstance, to whisper in his foul voice, to lie to you in those moments? That's why your circumstances do not bear the truth over Jesus. Jesus determines what's true. And so David, in this moment where his circumstances are telling him one thing, he tells his circumstances something else. He tells his circumstances, here's what's true. The Lord is my shelter, and he is my shield. He goes on in verse 4. One thing I ask from the Lord, and this only do I seek, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord all of the days of my life, to gaze on the beauty of the Lord and to seek him in his temple. For in the day of trouble, he will keep me safe in his dwelling, and he will hide me in the shelter of his sacred tent and set me high upon a rock. Here's what I love. Here's a moment where David, if he's in a small group right now, and they're doing the prayer request moment, like, hey, David, you got any prayer requests? Can you imagine, what prayer request do you ask for when somebody's trying to kill you? What would you ask for? Let's suppose you and your neighbor have just a really bad relationship, and your neighbor's like, next time I see you, I'm gonna kill you. What are you asking for prayer for at your next small group? That my neighbor doesn't kill me, maybe, that the lug nuts fall off of his wheel on the way to work. I don't know. You're probably praying for something, asking for something in relationship to that. What are you doing? 911. I got a nutso neighbor next door. Here's David. His life is being sought. You cannot miss this. What does he ask? What does he say? This is so powerful. This only do I seek. Not this in addition, this only. What? That I may see your beauty and I may dwell in your presence. Man, I've had so many times in my life where life seems like it's falling apart, and my prayer requests have been about life, have been about the problem, have been about the relationship, and I have just been so turned to a place of conviction this last week that those are the moments that my number one thing to ask shouldn't even necessarily be the change of my circumstances, but the presence and the beauty of Jesus to be mine. This is what David says while his life is being sought. This is the one thing I ask God, the one thing I ask. I just want more of you. Why? Because David knew something that I think some of us need to know and some of us have forgotten. That God's greatest gift to you is himself. May the greatest thing God can give you be the greatest thing you desire, which is him. If he is who he says he is, the creator of all things, and that means all things created are best experienced, even created moments of controversy are best experienced in relationship with him. That literally means food is better in relationship with Jesus when you acknowledge he's the provider of all things. It means vacation is better in light of acknowledging that he created the world to be enjoyed. It means intimacy is better when you realize he created the opportunity for souls to merge together in this thing called a one flesh relationship. Everything in life is better in acknowledgement and in relationship with Jesus. Even pain and suffering doesn't necessarily become better, but it becomes less potent when you realize that even in those moments, the best thing is not even for pain to decrease, but Jesus to increase. For his beauty and his presence. David says, that's the only thing I'm asking for right now. So here's the truth. On your screen in these moments, Jesus is our greatest reward in this life and in the next. Here's how David ends. Verse 13. Again, he's being hunted. His life is at risk. This is his confidence. I remain confident of this. I will see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. So not even, I know it'll be okay for me when I get to heaven. Now, today, in the land of still drawing breath in my lungs, here's what I'm confident of. I will see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living and wait for the Lord. Be strong and take heart and wait for the Lord. I just find it interesting that in this moment he says, this is what I'm confident of, because his circumstances would tell him, be confident that you're gonna die. Saul's gonna kill you. You have 600 men, he has 3,000. Even his own men are trying to tell him to be confident that God wants him to take Saul's life in the cave. But what David says his confidence is in is Jesus. It is in the Lord. And not just in the generic sense. He says, I'm confident. I will see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. That somehow, even while my life is being sought, I will still see God's goodness for me. The only way I can assume that a man whose life is being sought at a moment of conflict would conclude, I will see the goodness of the Lord while I'm still drawing breath in my lungs, is that he ultimately believed this: no one will ever care for you like Jesus. No one will ever care for you like Jesus. And so your trust put into his hands will never return idle, and it will never be the wrong choice, because it is true that while your circumstances may not be what you choose, he will never fail you. And so the story that we get to tell in moments of these crossroads is that when we take what is the opportunity to take matters into our own hands and instead place them in his hands, the story we get to tell then is of the faithfulness of God. Instead of the story being how life overwhelmed us, or how we just overwhelmed life and we just took care of business, how instead we placed our hands and our life and our heart and our mind and everything that is us into the charge of Jesus and trusted him that no one will ever take care of us like he does. God, would you bring to bear truths that are deeper than any human voice can explain and make sense of, through your Holy Spirit who teaches us all things. Amen.
Could tell a story, if my life would sing a song, if I have a testimony, if I have anything at all, no one ever cared for me like Jesus. His faithful hand has held me all this way. And when I'm old and gray and all my days are numbered on the earth, let it be known, in you alone my joy was found. tell their children. Let this be their memory. Oh, my treasure was in heaven, and you are everything to me. No one ever cared for me like Jesus. His faithful hand has held me all this way. And when I'm old and gray and all my days are numbered on the earth, let it be known in you alone my joy was found. Oh, my joy is in you, Jesus. I'm still in love. You're still enough for me. Still all I want. You're still my everything. I'm still in love. You're still enough for me. Still all I want. You're still my everything. No one ever cared for me like Jesus. Your faithful hand has held me all this way. And when I'm old and gray and all my days are numbered on the earth, let it be known in you alone my joy was found. As we move into this last song, it's called The Story I'll Tell. And our heart behind this is just, as God commanded the Israelites to continually recount his faithfulness so that they wouldn't forget from generation to generation how he cared for them. That as we place our trust in Jesus and we choose moment by moment, day by day, to trust him and to trust in his love for us and to grow deeper in that the story we'll tell will be one of continued faithfulness and reminding ourselves and encouraging ourselves in these moments that the story of our life is one of God's provision and his love, and And that will be a testimony not just for our lives, but to be on display for others around us as well. The hour is dark, and it's hard to see what you are doing here in the ruins and where this will lead. Oh, but I know that down through the years, I look on this moment and see your hand on it and know you were here. And I'll testify of the battles you've won, how you were my portion when there wasn't enough. And I'll testify of the seas that we've crossed, the waters you've parted, the waves that we've walked, singing, oh, my God did not fail. Oh, it's a story I'll tell, singing, oh, I know it is well. Oh, it's a story I'll tell. Believing gets hard when options are few, when I can't see what you're doing Oh, it's the story I'll tell.
I would believe anything to be true that she sings. Good grief. I would love if we could serve you with our prayer team as you walk out, maybe something you need to process, think through, have prayed over. They're directly back here. Just go see them, let them love on you and serve you. Also, as you walk out, one of the things that we want to do is give you a chance to engage more in this opportunity to be a part of the green space development. So what I'd love to invite you to do, we've already done this with an email, but if you didn't get the email or didn't open it yet, here's the invitation. I'm going to be over in our cafe area for about the next 15 minutes. We have some renderings over there. We would love to show you what the two spaces are going to look like and even do a walkthrough in the parking lot where it's kind of mapped out right now just to get a sense of what that space is going to turn into. We'd love to have you come, see that, get a feel for it, ask any questions, and just continue to ask you to prayerfully consider being a part of this and financially making it happen. Also, if you're gonna come over there and be a part of that, please go get your kids first. If you don't, you'll never see me again because they will kill me. So our kids workers will take me out back. So please go get your kids and then come on over. We'd love to spend a minute, ask questions, answer them, and just dream together. Have a great week.